Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chof Aleph Amud Beis, 6 lines from the top. Our Mishnah states that in the Regalim there's an abundance of people and Karbanos, and therefore the very first Avodah, Trumas Hadeshin, is made earlier to the point where it's at the end of the first Ashmura. The Gemara then brings a Mishnah and states that there was another miracle that was indeed connected to the abundance of people that came during the Regalim, and that is Oidim Tzefufim Umishtachavim Lerevochim. There was such an abundance of people that they were standing like beams, as if they were floating. Sometimes their feet were off the ground, and yet when they bowed down on the ground, there was enough room for everybody with revocha, with space. To the point where Rashi says they even had Daled Amos in between one another, so that one would not hear the vidui of his neighbor and be embarrassed. Al Kopanim, the Mishnah says there were 10 miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. Now the Gemara asks and challenges, Visu Leko, is there not more? That's all, there's only 10? Ask the Gemara, V'ha'omar Rav Oshaya. B'Shor shebana Shlomo Beis HaMikdash. When Shlomo built the first Beis HaMikdash, not that boy called Minei Begodim Shel Zohav. He planted all types of trees of fine fruits made out of gold. V'hoyu moitzin peirosem bizmanon, and they would actually bear forth fruit, golden peiros. Ksharuach menasheves bo henoishim, when the wind would blow, they would fall off the trees. Shenemar says Yirash kalavono in puriyoi. It says that there should be enough fruits that they should make noise like levonon, like the Beis Hamikdash's fruits, referring to these golden peiros. Ukshenichnesu nachrim leheichal yavish. When the nachrim entered the Beis Hamikdash, they then dried up. Shenemar uperach levonon umlal, that the fruits, the growth, the flowering of the Beis Hamikdash levonon, that became umlulal, that became now destroyed. But in the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return them. Shinemar, it says, Paroyach tifrach besogel, that they will flower once again and rejoice. Af gilas veranein, they will even with joyous and happy song, kavod halavonon nitan lo, the glory of the lavonon, again referring to the Beis Hamikdash, has been given to her. So ask the Gemara, Lachar, we have another nes that's not including these 10 nisim listed over here. Answers the Gemara, Nisei de kavi loy kochashiv, a miracle that was kavua, that was fixed, that is not included in our list of the 10. Says the Gemara, the following observation, Hashted the osi lahochi, now that we come to this conclusion, that the list that we're talking about of the miracles that took place on the Beis Hamikdash were those were not kavua, then Aaron ukruvim nami nisei dekviyaninu. Those questions that we challenged by asking about the Aaron and the kruvim, they don't take space themselves, and therefore those were miracles. So now we can conclude based on this that those were kaviyas dika miracles that were fixed, and therefore they were not included in the list as well. Omar, the Gemara returns to a statement that made before. The Oshan HaMarocha, talking about the smoke of the pyre of the Mizbeach. Umihava Oshan b'Marocha. The Gemara challenges, was there indeed the Oshan of the Marocha? By the way, the Gemara had said that the miracle of the Oshan, we'll discuss this shortly also, is that the Oshan, the smoke, it went up, but it did not disperse. In other words, it allowed all the areas of the Marocha to have clean, fresh air, because the smoke did not disperse amongst the whole area, it just went straight up. The Gemara now challenges, was there indeed smoke in the Marocha? Asked the Gemara, Vatanya, it says in the Brayso, Chamisha Dvorim Nemu Be'eshel Marocha, there are 5 things stated in connection to the fire of the Marocha. Revutza Ke'ori, it hovered, it crouched rather, like an Ori, like a lion. Ubora Kechama, it was clear like the sun. V'yesh bo mamish, and it had mamoshos, had substance. V'oicheles lachin kiyaveshim, it consumed that which was dry, as if it was that which was moist, as if it was dry. Ve'ena ma'ale oshin, and it did not bring up Oshon. So you see over here that does not have Oshon. So how can the Gemara say before that this was one of the miracles? It had Oshon, but it didn't disperse. We see that doesn't have Oshon. Answers the Gemara, Ki ka'amrinan b'dehedyo. This that we just brought now, these 5 things, this is in connection to that which was the fire that came min hashomayim, that came down on the Mizbeach. That did not have Oshon. But that which was put on the Mizbeach by a human being, that was required, that did have Oshon. The time says in the following brayse, V'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakoyen eish ala Mizbeach. And b'nei Aaron, the children of Aaron, were told, they were commanded to put fire on the Mizbeach, even though the fire did come down min hashomayim. So that's why over here there was Eish, because it was the Eish from the Hedyot. Ask the Gemara on one of these things that we mentioned, the fire was Revutas Keori, it crouched like a lion. Ask the Gemara, Revutas Keori, Vehatanya, behold, we have a Brisa, Omar Rabbi Chanina Sgana Kayhanim, he was a witness, and he said the following, Ani Re'isia Revutza Kekelev, I saw the fire, and it had a image that was crouched like a dog, so not like a lion. Answers the Gemara Lokashya, it's not difficult. Why? Because kan b'mikdash rishon, kan b'mikdash sheni. That which was revutza ki'ori, that's talking about the first Beis Hamikdash. That which was revutza ki'kelev was the second Beis Hamikdash. What's the difference? Says the Maharsha, because the first Beis Hamikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech, came from the Davidic dynasty. And as it says over here, but they came from Yehuda. Shevet Yehuda was Gur Ka'aryeh. So therefore had that crouched like a lion. Masha'en came, the Persians built the second Beis HaMikdash, and therefore they are compared to a dog. Ask the Gemara, Mikdash Sheni mi havoi? Was there indeed a fire that was coming down min hashamayim and during Beis Sheni? Ve'omar Rav Shmuel bar Unya by Inya, my dersi, what's meant by the pasuk ve'ertze boy ve'ikavdo? I will desire it and I will give honor. V'karinan ve'akavdo, meaning it's spelled with a hey at the end. What is the reason why it states in the pasuk ve'ertze boy ve'ikavdo without the hey? Explains the Gemara, my shnod mechusar hey. Elu chamisha dvorim shahoyu bein mikdash rishon and mikdash sheni. The hay in Gematria is 5, and therefore this corresponds to a hint to 5 differences between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Ve'eluhin, these are them. Aroin ve'kaporos ukruvim. Those existed in the Bayis Rishon, but Bayis Sheni they did not have the Aron and its covering and the kruvim. The second thing is the Eish. Mashma, the Eish did not come down min hashamayim during Bayis Sheni, only Bayis Rishon. The Shechina was lacking in Bayis Sheni. The Ruach HaKodesh also no longer was there in Bayis Sheni. The Urim V'Tumim, and in the Choshen, the Urim V'Tumim also was not a message that was being then able to be accessed during Bayis Sheni like it was during Bayis Rishon. That was the Urim V'Tumim was the lettering that was inside of the Choshen that lit up an answer to a question that was necessary for Klal Yisrael at the time. So that did not exist in Bayis Sheni. So you see, amongst these 5 was the Eish. Amri, they said, in mehava, it did exist in Bayis Sheni, but sayua lo Messiah. However, it did not have the siua like it did in Bayis Rishon. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon, bringing the following brisa. Sheish Eishois Hein. There are 6 different Eishois, 6 different fires. Says the brisa. Yesh Oicheles Ve'eino Shoise. There is a fire that consumes but not drinks. V'yesh Shoise Ve'eino Oichel. There's a fire that drinks, so to speak, and does not consume, does not eat. V'yesh Oicheles Ve'shoise, that does consume and also drinks. V'yesh oicheles lachin kiyeveshin. There's a fire that consumes that which is moist like it is dry. V'yesh eish doiche eish. There's also a fire that also repels another fire. So the Gemara now explains these various fires that we just mentioned. Yesh oicheles, yesh eish oicheles eish. There is eish that is oicheles eish. Oh, this is the final one. And there's an eish that it consumes another eish. Now the Gemara goes through each one. Yesh eish oicheles ve'eino shoise. There's a fire that's oicheles and not shoise. What does that refer to? Hadidon. That's our classical fire. It's oicheles, it consumes, but that which is liquid, it doesn't burn up the liquid. Shoise ve'eino oicheles, the fire that is shoise, it drinks, but it does not consume, it doesn't eat. What does that refer to? The choylin, person who is a sick person who has high fever. It causes him to be thirsty, but it does not cause him to be hungry. Oicheles v'shoise. What's the fire that's oicheles and shoise? The Eliyahu. By Eliyahu Hanavi. That was such a fire that was oicheles v'shoise. Dichsiv, it said the pasuk. Ves hamayim asher bat'olo lichecho. There it states that the fire was so great when he challenged the Avodah Zarah of Baal over there, that their deity did not consume on the Mizbeach, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent a special fire that consumed not only the carbon over there, but also consumed everything else. Like the pasuk says, "Ves hamayim," even the water, asher bata'ola lichecha, it even licked up the water that was in the trenches. Oicheles lachin keveshin. It consumes that which is moist, just like as if it's dry. The marocha, that's the marocha, that's the pyre, the mizbeach. There it took even meat that was indeed something that was moist, and it made it like charcoal. Yesh eish doiche eish. The final one is there's eish that's doiche, that repels eish. What does that refer to? The Gavriel. That's referring to Gavriel. That's doiche eish, because Gavriel was sent when the three tzaddikim, Mishael, Hananiah, ve'Azariah, were thrown into the Kivshan Eish by Nebuchadnezzar Rasha. They did not want to then bow down to the idols, so they were thrown into the Eish. And Gavriel, he beseeched HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let me go down and save them. So indeed he went down and he took the fire, his own fire, and he cooled off the burning furnaces inside the Kivshan Eish to then save these three tzaddikim. And the fire that he then caused to cool inside the furnace also then caused fire on the outside to kill and burn those who were then causing them to be thrown into the Kivshan Eish. And there's one last one, V'yesh Eish Oicheles Eish, one that Eish that repels the Eish, the Shechina. Sorry, Eish that consumes Eish. Sorry, that's the Shechina. Damar Choshit Etzboi Beinayim V'Sarfan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he, so to speak, Havayachal, he extended his finger of fire and he consumed the fiery angel. So that was Eish, that's Oicheles Eish. Now the Gemara says, "Va'oshin hamarach afilu kol harucha sheba'olam ein mezizois oisam imkaimo." We said before that oshin that was on Maracha, that was indeed produced by the Hedyoit, that fire, it says that went straight up. It didn't disperse into the areas of the around the courtyard, the Azara, and therefore it was smoke-free, clean air. And even if there was many types of winds that would blow, as hard as they would blow, would not cause this smoke to disperse. He asked, it says after Motzei Yantif of Chag, referring to Shmini Atzeres, Hakol Tsoifin La'ashan HaMa'arocha. Everybody would look and peer at the Ashan of the Ma'arocha to see which way is it dispersing, which direction, to get a sign as to what is going to be in the ensuing year. We know that Sukkot is a time where we daven for the rain. There's a judgment on the Geshem, on the rain, and it's complete on Hoshana Rabbah. Motzei Yantif, so they want to see which direction was the Ashan going towards, to then get an indication as to what's going to be with the rain season. So it states, Noite Klapeit Sofoin, when the wind would blow towards the east, towards the north, from a southern wind that would go towards the north, then Anim Smeichin Ubali Batim Atzevim, the poor people will be happy, yet the wealthy Balabatim would be saddened. Why? Because it would be an indication that there would be a lot of rainfall, and the fruits in the storehouses would then be markivin, they would become rotten as a result. Therefore, the balabatim had to sell their fruits at a lower price, whereby the anim would be happy and those balabatim would be unhappy. Not the klape doroim. If it was in the opposite direction, that means it was a northern wind that went towards the south, then anim atzevim ubalebatim smechim. There would be the opposite. Anim would be unhappy, whereas the balabatim, they would be happy. Why? This would be an indication that since it's going towards the south, it would be dry, wouldn't be so much rainfall. And therefore the fruits, because it wouldn't have so much moisture, would be able to be stored, whereby the owners would be able to then sell at a higher price. So the anim would be unhappy, would be saddened, whereas the balabat and the wealthy ones would be happy. Not the klape mizrach. If it went towards the east, that means it was a western wind, then hakos mechin, everyone would be joyful because it would be even balanced, and therefore would be too much rain and too much dryness. Klape mariv, on the opposite direction, it was an eastern wind going towards the west, hakolat saving. There it would be causing a unhappiness, because that would dry up all of the zroim and be bad for everybody. So now we're left with the question, Hare, we see over here that there was the smoke of the Mizbeach that was being dispersed in different directions. Answers the Gemara, it went indeed back and forth like a dikla, like a dekel tree. However, it never dispersed. In other words, it's true it went a little bit to one side or the other, one direction or the other, but it never dispersed. And that was enough of an indication for them. However, the miracle still exists, as it stated before, as much as the winds would blow, it would not disperse to the rest of the Azara. Omar Mar, the Gemara brings back the statement that we just made, Klape Mizrach Hakos Mechim. When it's a western wind that goes towards the east, everybody would be joyful. We said it's going to be even balanced. Whereas Klape Marav Hakolat Saving, they would be very dry and everybody would be unhappy because an eastern wind blowing to the west. Ask the Gemara, Raminu Mizrachis La'olam Yafe. Here it says that if it's an eastern wind, it would always be very good, Yafe. Yet we just said before, if it was an eastern wind that was Klape the west, it would be, everybody would saddened. And also vice versa, Ma'arav is La'olam Kasha. And again, that's a steer to what we just said before, because we said if it's a western wind going towards the east, everybody will be happy. Ruach tzefoinis yafer lechitin. If it's a northern wind, it would be good for the wheat. B'shashay v'shlish, when it already grew a third, because then it already had enough rainfall. V'kash lezesim b'zman shehein chointin. Whereas it would be difficult for the zesim when they're just blossoming, because they do need rainfall. Ruach d'roimi is the opposite. Kasha lechitin b'shashay v'shlish, since it doesn't have enough rain. So now the Gemara says, the Gemara brings a mnemonic, a siman to remember just what it said. The shulchan was located in the northern part of the heichal, and the menorah on the south side. This shulchan, which we're saying was in the south, so that would be then causing things to grow. In other words, it would be good for the shulchan, which was really, the shulchan had, of course, the lechem upon him, so it's a reference to the chitin. If it was then, as we said before, it would be good for it. If it was the shulchan, when it was in the north, and therefore, if it was a wind that was blowing, it was a northern wind. And that which we said before, it would be good for the south, for the menorah, which has the zaysin, the olive oil, when it's blowing there, when it's blowing south. So now we're left with the question, you just told me now that when it comes to the east, that means to say that it's going towards the east, but it's a western wind, everybody's happy. Yet over here we say the opposite. We say that if it's a western wind, it's kosher la'olam. And the opposite, you told me before that if it's a western wind blowing towards the east, an eastern wind blowing toward the west, then everybody is unhappy, and yet over here it says that it's considered to be yafeh if it's an eastern wind. Answers the Gemara, depends from whose perspective. Lokasha, halon v'ha lehu. Us in Bavel, that's very good to have an eastern wind because it's dry. And therefore, since Bavel itself is moist, therefore it's considered to be very good for Bavel. Whereas in Eretz Yisrael, where they need the rainfall much more, therefore the eastern is not going to be considered to be a good wind. So therefore it's not a steer, it depends. Are we talking about from Bavel or the perspective of Eretz Yisrael?